Hey guys and girls, it's Philip McKernan. I'm taking a few days out after a pretty intense, very rewarding couple of days with a group of people on Ireland's west coast. And I often say this, sometimes people say, oh, you're very good at what you do. I'm not sure if that's true, but the work is only as good as the people that show up. And my God, not just did we have great people show up, but they really showed up, and that made my job a lot more enjoyable and a lot easier, if that's the right term, even though sometimes it doesn't feel that way. So generally speaking, after an event, I take a couple of days out just on my own, away from everything, just to kind of recoup and recharge and so on. But something I wanted to share with you, and it's really an invitation or challenge back to you, to contemplate a story, a belief, a truth, or an inevitability that you carry inside of you that is often dormant, and I would call it a shadow story. That's the term I'm going to put on it, a shadow story. It lies in the shadows within our psyche, within our body, within our mind, within our heart. I don't think it penetrates the soul, because the soul is so pure that I don't think anything gets there, which is one of the major advantages in beginning to explore, what is the soul, what is the purest and the I suppose the purest essence of who we are as a person. I think when we can begin to shine a light on that, I think we get a lot of insight into who we really are, who we're really meant to be, not necessarily how we often show up in the world. But this idea of this shadow story, it's a story that we run from. It's a story that we hide from. It's a story that we work hard to almost ensure that it doesn't get oxygen, it doesn't get to fulfill itself, and so on. Yet there's a form of inevitability that creeps with it, because it's such a fundamental thing, and it's such a fundamental part of who we are. And I often say that, there's two types of parenting that we typically witness in the world: either history repeating itself, or somebody doing the opposite of somebody else, a parent or otherwise, or society, to make sure that they don't repeat history. And I would honestly and respectfully say that neither of those are an authentic representation of you as an individual. To be aware of what didn't serve us and what hurt us and what created traumas and angers and frustrations in our lives and sadness, and to shine a light on that and begin to change the pattern, the behavior, begin to accept what happened, and begin to kind of write a new story is very, very wise. But to do this can often just lead us to more frustrations in the future. So this story, and I'm going to give you an example without using any names. Somebody shared last week at Braveheart, the event that I ran on Ireland's west coast, that one of the things that they're terrified of is loneliness. And I thought it was such a beautiful, honest admission and an insight into what's really important for them. And so many people experience loneliness in the world. We're so connected, whether it's through things like this, or we're so connected with social media, and yet often we feel a kind of a loneliness, a disconnectedness from the world, a kind of a sense of looking in from the outside, being a spectator, even in our own lives, that often is representative of a kind of a disconnectedness within ourselves, which often we then project into the world, and then we put 1 and 1 and come up with 6, and we realize that we think we're lonely, and sometimes we are, and sometimes we're actually creating that loneliness. We've put ourselves in an island away from people. But this individual had this terror of being alone, and yet when we pared and layered it back down, there was this shadow story that lingered, that this person was pretty unaware of. And that was, in the end of the day, I'm going to be alone. It's almost like a script. This individual describes it as a truth, okay, which is even more frightening, because they're saying that no matter what happens, the truth is that I'm going to end up on my own. So you can begin to imagine that that is a pretty devastating, destructive story or truth in this person's mind to hold as you navigate the world your brain, your mind, your heart is telling you not just can it be different, but you want it to be different and you believe it can be different. And you can meet people and date people and whatever. But in the end of the day, if there's this deep-seated shadow story, the inevitability of that is there. What I find is then that we set out almost unaware of this to actually manifest that result, to produce that result, to create that result, to satisfy that story, to satisfy and give it oxygen. So to be aware of the story is massively important, and then to shine a light on it, to see its origin. So where did that come from? Why does that story exist? And is it a story, or is it a truth, or is it just bullshit that you've been telling yourself for a very, very, very long time? And you can begin to dismantle the story, begin to kind of rattle the story, turn it upside down, check it for authenticity, and then you can begin to embrace elements of it. And I do think we can begin to let go of a lot of that story, maybe not all of it. I don't think that should ever be the goal in any of this work, completely. And I suppose my question for you, and please don't dismiss this as, yeah, that doesn't resonate. I don't have one of those stories. I believe we all have them. We may have one or two or three, but I definitely believe we have one. And it goes something like this. In the end of the day, I am going to be whatever that word is. In the end of the day, I am going to be poor. In the end of the day, I am going to be alone. In the end of the day, I am going to be unsuccessful. In the end of the day, I am going to be irrelevant. In the end of the day, I am going to be a victim. Whatever that story is, and I would strongly encourage you to take those words, write them out, and answer them, and keep answering until one nails you between the eyes, like one hits you, that you almost find yourself tearing up or getting angry with because you don't want it to be true. And the only reason that I would invite you to contemplate uncovering something that might piss you off, that might make you sad, is that you can hopefully find the excitement to begin to understand that you do have this shadow story that has been, pulling some strings in your life, that goes against your intellect. In other words, you'll make a decision, you'll say something, you'll do something, you go, what the fuck, what was that about? Why did I do that? It goes against everything I say I believe, or say I value, or say I want to pursue. Well, I think one of the reasons you do that is because in some way, shape, or form, you want to give the story that you're unaware of, the shadow story, the light, the energy, the oxygen. You want to fulfill that story to some extent. So it might give you an insight into what often is referred to as self-sabotage. Let's just use a more commonly used term. But nonetheless, it's a really valuable exercise. And then you can shine a light, shine a torch, flashlight, wherever you call them, in the world into that story and begin to dismantle it for it to find out, is it actually true, or is it just something that you've created based on data points in your life or the life you've lived, etc., etc. So anyway, that is my little ask for you today. I hope you're well wherever in the world you are. Please join our Brave Clan calls. How do you get onto the Brave Clan calls? You have to join the Brave Clan Facebook group. It's free. There's no fees. There's no selling. There's no big hard push. There's nothing. And we're doing these calls once a month, and we take a topic and I share a story around it. I ask you a question so you can reflect. And then if you want to go live with me in terms of sharing or asking questions or live coaching, then you can do that. And the feedback has been amazing. In fact, the feedback has been absolutely ridiculous in terms of really good. But my favorite bit of feedback in the last week was somebody watched it with their wife and their daughter and themselves, and they sat there for the 45 minutes, and at the end they turned off the laptop or whatever, and they had a great conversation. And that to me is very rewarding when you can see different generations, different relationships under the one roof. Participate in something like that gives me great joy. So join the Brave Clan Facebook group. And then basically from there, then we basically put the calls up and all the details up. We put these calls on once a month. We do not record them, so they're not made available afterwards. And that is for privacy. It's not to get more people on the call. It's just for privacy. If someone shares something, I want them to know that they can share something in an environment like that that's not going to be reproduced and sent all around the world on a video to help promote us and our business. So that's what we do with those. We will be doing some workshops coming up online over the winter period to support people in different capacities, using stories that people have submitted and topics that they want to shine light on, etc. And of course, there's always the live gatherings with us and me personally in Ireland, at the Brave Castle most likely as well as we move forward in the future. So take care and thank you. Take care. Bye.